Hello, everyone. Welcome to the new mini bootcamp for Bootstrap. So let me start sharing my screen. So we're going to go over a small introduction about Clarusway. So you need secure your career. That's the slogan for Clarusway. Who we are, that's a very good question. Clarusway started September 2019. They have a training facility, or we do have a training facility in Washington, D.C. area. We have over 1,500 students plus in different 39 countries. As you can see in the map, mainly we focus in US and Europe, but we also have in other countries. We have over 200 people actually serving you, put you in the right path, learning coding and learning web development. So for the US team and the school facilities, you will have instructors and mentors that over 80 plus certified instructors and experienced mentors. They will guide you on your way in your journey learning web development in general, either on the front end or the back end. There is also a career management team that they will have one-on-one career coaching services. And there's a huge network of industry with experts and alumni from Clarusway. So they are industry experts sharing their sessions. And there's multiple students that I teach now. They work in the big companies, work here in New York City. They work with IPM. I'm located in New York City, by the way. IPM, Amazon, Facebook, which is a good indication. And now it's a very hot time to be in that field. Teamwork can make the dream work, of course. Everything starts with the teamwork. There is multiple courses provided by Clarusway, and it's not only the front-end development or the back-end development. There's also cybersecurity. There's Salesforce. There's multiple courses. You can go to the Clarusway webpage, and you'll find that there's a lot of courses provided and related to multiple IT different topics. Clarusway is ranked as one of the best boot camps between 2021 and still in 2023 by the leading organization on IT career trainings. For example, Course Report, Career Karma. If you do your research, you'll find that Clarusway actually ranked top high for multiple reasons. For the support that we provide to the students. I actually been teaching for over 7 years now, and one of the best support that actually I see in a boot camp, it's without no doubt comes from Clarusway. One-on-one sessions with the students whenever they need it. A lot of hands-on projects. It's like they have a lot of project that you can build your portfolio and you get the hands-on experience, not only the theory behind the coding, but you actually get practical information. And that's a very good reason why you should pick Clarusway over any other provider or bootcamp provider. Plus, you get the live session, and that's something personally I prefer, because what makes Clarusway different from other bootcamps that you have a live session, you have a live instructor. If you can work with the instructor, you have any question, you can ask him right away. And instead of just watching videos, which is similar that you can go on YouTube, but if you watch a video and you have a question, then it will be hard to ask you questions. Also, the teaching model is different. So Clarusway have a full learning management system. So you can put everything like the slides, the videos been recorded during the session, the calendar, everything in one location. So you don't have to look around where is the resources, but you have all the resources in one location in the LMS system. You will have live session, and that will be in the multiple instructors. During this live sessions, also you're going to do multiple of live coding for multiple projects. Mentoring before the live sessions, you will have access to training or training team can help you with either homework problems, with if you have an issue with your personal project, definitely they will go over the same topic over and over until they make sure that you fully understand the topic. So the career management system, or the CMS. Number one here, you will get help in resume preparation. So you not just get the information, however, you get also Clarusway get you back in preparing your resume, update your LinkedIn profile, and there's multiple of mock interviews. So you will get trained how to answer the questions, what could be the possible questions that you have in an interview. Number two, hiring process management, technical interview, final offer interview, they will be with you until you secure a job. Number three, offer and negotiation management. That's something that you should have after you learn programming, or regardless what is the course you're going to pick. That's one of the, it's not only the knowledge or the skills that you gain, also the social skills that you will get from Clarusway, like the background check, onboarding management, new position couching, alumni network services. You're going to become part of the Clarusway community. Even after you graduated, you get your certificate, you still have access to all the resources. You have access to the Slack channel and the GitHub repositories, and you will be connected always with the professional community of Clarusway. So here we're gonna focus specifically, or give a small introduction specifically about the full stack development course. It breaks down to front-end course and back-end course. In the front end, you will learn mainly HTML, CSS, that will include Bootstrap as well, which that's what we're going to be covering today. Bootstrap is considered as CSS framework. So before you actually use Bootstrap, you should have a little bit of information about CSS and HTML and a little bit of JavaScript. You will also learn TypeScript to write clean codes, and TypeScript is becoming a recommendation right now in multiple of leading industry. And if you look in the multiple jobs, they're listing the jobs as TypeScript, JavaScript, or React TypeScript. It's one of the recommendation. It's extending JavaScript to a limit to make it help you write professional code with TypeScript. Also, you will learn about React, which is a front-end framework. But in order to learn React, you have to get the fundamentals of HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. So Clarusway put this learning path for you. So initially, you will learn about HTML, CSS, and the framework Bootstrap. Then you learn about TypeScript. Then you move forward to a framework like React. We're also going to learn about Next.js, which is a framework for React to make the development process much easier and have much benefit than React itself. You will learn about a state management library like Redux, how you can deploy or use backend services like Firebase provided by Google, and also how you can create custom style sheets or pre-processing style sheets using Sass as well. So all of these technologies are in the front-end course. You will learn everything. And not only that, for every single new technology you will learn about, you will have a project to get the hands-on experience about this technology. When you learn React, you will get multiple projects related to React. When you learn TypeScript, you will have a dedicated project for TypeScript. And actually, I would say even more technologies than listed here are included in the front end. For the back end, you have you will get two types of databases. You get the PostgreSQL, so it's a type of SQL database. Of course, you will learn what is the difference between SQL and NoSQL. MongoDB is considered to be NoSQL. You will have JavaScript in the backend, which is Node.js. It's considered to be one of the best technologies. It's extremely fast for multiple reasons. And you will also learn about Express, which is considered to be a framework. And instead of writing the server or the backend, everything from the scratch by Node.js, however, you have a framework to make your life easy as a developer. And you can write the server or the backend using Node.js and Express. And if you're familiar with the term MERN stack or mean stack, in that case, you can think about it as a MERN stack, because MERN stack, the M stands for MongoDB as a database. That's where you store your data. E short for Express, and R for React, whatever front end you're using, and the N for Node.js. And it's becoming very popular now to use Node.js and Express as a backend. As a matter of fact, multiple companies actually, like Linden, they moved from traditional backends like PHP to Node.js because it's extremely fast and it's extremely reliable to use. NoSQL database and JavaScript in the backend as well. You will also learn about Postman, which is a tool that will help you to test your backends. Beside that, you will also learn about testing and automation, either in the front end and the back end. So it's part of your job as a developer later on, not only to write codes, but also to test codes and writing testing procedure for your code. And that's also included in either the front end or the back end. If anybody have a question, feel free to interrupt me at any time. I will be more than happy to answer your questions. So the path or the modules, you have 3 different modules. Module 1 will be the front end web essential, or module 1, and that's if you have no idea how to use a computer. That will get you on a path how you can set up the tools that we're going to need in the development, how to use the terminal, how to use GitHub, how to use all the essential parts that you will need. So technically, you don't need any prior information to start module 1. They will start from module 1 from the scratch. And the starting date actually is going to be from August 21 to November 11, 2023. So actually, it's going to be opening within 3 weeks. It's high demand skills for a strong IT background. And think about it, that's not only required for the front end, but it's required for any IT course in general, because you need to be able to use the terminal, you need to be able to use a computer in general. So it's a very good course, especially if you don't have any background writing code. For module 2, that's where web development with React, or you get to learn about HTML, CSS, JavaScript in general, vanilla JavaScript, but also along with the React. So that will start November 21st, 2023 until February 17, 2024. It's capable of an entry-level IT position after completing this model. And the last model will be the backend, where that's where you store the data. So most of the web applications or even mobile application, they will need the interface or whatever the user interface was, and also where you store the data, or the backend that will serve the data. So the backend, as I mentioned, it's going to be Node.js and both NoSQL and SQL as Postgres database. It's going to start from February 26 until June 1st, 2024. And it's highly skilled IT professional, because now you're not only know the backend, but you also know how to develop front end and the backend. You get both technologies together. You can write a full application from the scratch. You get that skill. So for the project, as I mentioned, there's a lot of projects, tons of projects that you will get hands-on experience during your learning process with Clarusway. So for just JavaScript, you will create project like Find a Number, To-Do app, Hangman as a game, Lottery game, iOS calculator, checkout page, product list page, countries app, weather app. And notice that the weather app and some apps, that's where you can actually interact with external servers and fetch data from an external server, and other algorithm tasks. For HTML and CSS, you will have survey form. That's when you learn about HTML forms. Netflix page. We're going to make a mock page for Google landing page. So we're going to style it the same way as Google landing page or search page in Google. How you can create parallax websites. How you can mock the Clarusway web landing page, Clarusway website design. How you can create a checkout form, team member page, Bootstrap homepage, and also how you can create a SaaS profile website where, as I mentioned, every time you learn about a new technology, it's going to be project related to it. And the SaaS profile website is after we cover SaaS, you will learn more about SaaS practically by creating a project. For React, you will have an image gallery, tool places, language card, random user, task tracker, recipe application, movie application, item stock application, and the blog app. After you finish the front end course or the module, and you get to the backend module, you will start writing your own servers. You're not going to rely on any external server or backend services. You're going to be able to write your own server to create a simple CRUD application. CRUD here is like create, read, update, and delete. So you'll be able to interact with the server to create a resource, read a resource, update a resource, and delete a resource. You will create a simple to-do app. You start always simple, and then the complexity of the application, you start simple, and then after you learn and gain more information, your project get more complex. Flight app, quiz app, and you have the stock application and the blog application. A typical weekly part-time schedule. So all the time in Eastern time. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you will have a live session. Live sessions from 7 to 10, online class. You will meet with an instructor and you go over a specific topic or whatever the project that you're working on that day. Friday, you have a workshop, teamwork, CMS. And for Saturday, it's going to be online live class. I'm not sure about that, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. These I give you, hey, Chris, thank you for your question. We'll just introduce you to our full stack course. Then we're going to start with the 3-day Bootstrap course. And you have the Sunday as a free day. I see. So it's 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. We're starting from 10 a.m. That's the workshop, but then you're going to have an online class as well, all the way to 5 p.m. But that's typically your weekly schedule as a part-time schedule. Typically, weekly full-time schedule. If you're full-time, in that case, you're going to start from 8:30 a.m. till 12 p.m. Then you're going to have self-study with the mentor supervised with you, and you have a live online class, typical schedule from Monday to Friday, and that's going to be from 1 to 4:30. Saturday, free day, Sunday, free day. After you finish Module 1, Module 2, and Module 3, the 3 modules, which IT role will you apply for after the graduation? Here are more options. These are the titles that you probably want to target, like a front-end developer, back-end developer, web developer, full-stack developer, especially if you've got the front-end and the back-end, React developer, and this is because you're going to be expert in React, and also Express developer, JavaScript developer, and Node.js developer. All of these are the titles that you want to target as a job title, and you're going to be capable with these skills learned from Clarusway. How much does a full stack developer make? And if you go to Glassdoor and ask that type of question, you will notice that I can't confirm to you it's much higher than this. I would say the median is around 150 as a full stack developer. Actually, I have one of my friends, actually, he's a director in a nonprofit company in New Jersey, and he was looking for full stack developer, and he was offering 150, and they find a hard time actually finding somebody to accept the 150 because they're capable to make more outside. So it's very highly paid title. And if you get the skills, it's, I would say, one of the best jobs that you can get because one, you work completely remote from home. Two, it don't require any education background. You just, if you have the skill, if you pass the interviews, if you know your JavaScript and you know your skills or the technology, you get hired right away. I'll take any questions. And of course, please follow us in our social media, Facebook, YouTube. You're going to find very, very useful videos about projects in YouTube, also on Instagram and LinkedIn and Twitter. And here are the contacts from Clarusway. And if you do have any question, please let me know, or you can reach out through the Slack, and I'll be more than happy to answer any of your questions. Okay. Let me close that. So we have the mini bootcamp for Bootstrap, where if you're not familiar with Bootstrap, Bootstrap is considered to be a CSS framework. And it's not the only CSS framework exists in the market. There is multiple of them, but Bootstrap probably is considered to be the most popular framework for multiple reasons, because it's really easy. It's made by Twitter, which is Twitter team was responsible for maintaining the versions from Bootstrap. And if you go to Bootstrap webpage, you just search for Bootstrap. Make sure you're on version 5 and above, because there is a huge difference from version 5 to version 4 to version 3. Whatever we're going to cover in today's class is going to be version 5. So we're going to go over the installation, what is Bootstrap, how you can install it, and different type of components. It have CSS components and it have JavaScript components as well. So the way the classes will work for today class, we're going to cover hopefully most of the CSS components. Tomorrow we're going to be covering the JavaScript components and some of the CSS components that if we wasn't able to cover all of them today. And the third session will be complete project, put together everything we learned in Bootstrap and create a landing page, probably Clarusway landing page, and deploy that project. For typically the class flow will be, we start 7 and you get 10-minute break for every single hour. So around 7:50, we're going to take a 10-minute break. Then we're going to continue after the 10-minute break, and 8:50, we're going to take another 10-minute break. So it's going to be 2 10-minute breaks. Okay, so let's start. As I mentioned, to fully understand Bootstrap or to work with Bootstrap, it will help if you have a little bit of knowledge of CSS and HTML. Make sure you're in version number 5. There is multiple ways that you can install Bootstrap. One way of them is actually to install it locally in your machine. Now, let me show you that. You can create a new folder here. And I'm just going to rename the file here. Bootstrap -1. And you have some command here that you put it in your terminal, npm I, short for install Bootstrap. If you want to use that command, you should install Node.js first, because Node.js is a JavaScript that's running in your terminal. When you install Node.js, you will have npm automatically installed with the Node.js. So you go to Node.js, you search for it. You'll notice it will detect automatically what type of system you are. Here it's detecting that I'm in a Windows 64-bit. And you can either install the long-term supported version or the current version. Highly recommend the long-term supported because it's supported by Node.js team. Once you install it, you get the installer, you follow the step of installation, you will have an install. And additional to Node.js, you will get something called NPM, or for short for Node Package Management. It will help you to install any library that you want to install in your JavaScript project. Okay, so I create Bootstrap 1 folder. And editor that we're going to use is going to be Visual Studio Code. If you don't have Visual Studio Code, which is becoming the very popular editor now, I'm assuming that everybody using Visual Studio Code, you want to search for VS Code. And also you want to download the Visual Studio Code. And I'm going to paste on the class chat the links for the VS Code and the Node.js. And this is the link for Bootstrap. So you have all the links. Okay. Again, this is one way to get Bootstrap. If you scroll down here, you'll see that you can install it via Package Manager or the NPM. This is, I want to show it. I'm going to show you this method, but also you can get it from a CDN, and a CDN is short for Content Delivery Network. Again, Bootstrap, you can think about it as a CSS file, and this CSS file can be hosted on the cloud in some computer on the cloud, and you simply can access its URL and access that CSS and access also the JavaScript file. So this is much simpler, of course, because you don't have to install the CSS or install the JavaScript inside your computer. You don't have to download the file. This is the local installation. I'm going to show you both installation. So after you're installing the Visual Studio Code, you can right-click, open the folder, and you have the option open with VS Code. And if you're not familiar with VS Code, just let me know if you have any question. You get the welcome screen here. You can create files right here. You have some tabs where you have the Explorer here. And I can share my code with you. I have an extension called Live Share, so I can share it with you. I can copy the link. So if anybody want to take some snippet from my code, you'll have it as well in the class chat. Get back to the Explorer. Okay, now the first step in modern JavaScript, if you have a lot of dependencies and you want to have these dependencies installed in your folder, you probably want to open the terminal first. To open the terminal in Visual Studio Code, there is a shortcut, which is the Control key and the backticks. And that will toggle your terminal. Notice that it will open the terminal. That's instead of actually going to View and you click Terminal. So it's Control plus the backticks. And the backticks key is the key that left to the number 1 in your keyboard. So you can open the terminal. And as I mentioned, for modern JavaScript pages or applications, you want to create something called package.json. Think about it as a blueprint or a manifest file for your application, describe your application. So you can do npm init. So npm is the Node Package Manager, and then init is short for initializing a new project. Click enter. It will ask you a couple of questions. Is your code called this package bootstrap-1? Yeah, why not? Version 1, yes. And usually when you create the package.json, you just get the default, like the description, entry point. You keep pressing enter, give you some snippet. This is how the file will look like. Are you happy with that? You can press enter, and it will create this package.json. And the reason you have this package.json file, because npm will use it to keep track of any dependency in your application. Okay, so I finished the first step. Second step, to install Bootstrap. If you go to the Bootstrap, you see here npm install. That's the command. You copy it, and press enter, notice it's going to get all the information, and you will have a file or a folder here created for you. Ismanuel, you need the Node.js, but don't worry about it. As I mentioned, there is 2 ways to install Bootstrap, showing you one of the ways. You need you need the Node.js in order to use npm. But if you didn't install Node.js, it's not a big deal. I'm going to show you the other way, which is much simpler. So here you have a Node module folder, and notice that you have Bootstrap installed locally in your computer. You don't have to use something in the internet or locate it in another computer. You have this folder here. You have all the CSS files from Bootstrap. You have all the JavaScript files in Bootstrap, and you can use it right away. And also, if you take a look after you install the Bootstrap by this command, it's already get registered inside your package.json, because now it clearly say that the dependencies of your application, it have a dependency of a Bootstrap 5.3.1, which is cool, because now you can delete this folder. And now, since you have this entry in the package.json, you can always do npm install, and it will install all the packages for you that your application require. Okay. Again, if you're not familiar with Node.js, with npm package, don't worry about it. It's not the end of the world. We're going to do it in a different way. I'm going to remove everything here. Just want to show you that there's multiple ways to get Bootstrap. The second way that's listed in their website here, and let me create a folder here, it's going to be topic number 1, installation.html. And with Visual Studio Code, this is an HTML file. You can create an HTML skeleton or boilerplate by pressing the exclamation mark. The exclamation mark, you press it, you will get a very simple skeleton for HTML. And we can change the title here. Okay. Now you can copy the CDN, and we're here at the Get Bootstrap. You copy this CDN, and it's a link. So it's a CSS file, and you paste it inside your head, and you format the document. You can also need the script file. You copy the script file, and this is a bundle for Bootstrap, JavaScript, and Popper.js. And you can add it in your header. But if you're going to add the script to your header, there is actually 2 of them. Bootstrap, I'm going to remove one of them. If you're going to add it to your header, you probably want to add an attribute called defer. And what is defer will do for you? It will make sure that it will only run the script after everything in the body get executed. Okay. So now this is my head. Get ready. And that's it. That's the installation. And you want to make sure that Bootstrap gets installed. You can have an H1 here and say hello world. And there is an extension that I'm going to be using here called live server. So you can search for live server. And I have it installed here. You press in this icon to install any extension you need in Visual Studio Code. So live server, and here's the extension. Let me uninstall it. Tell you that it requires reload, that's fine. Live server. And you just install the extension. And this extension, it's going to work with any HTML file. You can right-click on it, and you will have the option open with live server. And once you click on it, it will open your application in a browser. There you go. And notice now that this font is not the default font with any browser. That indicated Bootstrap correctly installed in this page by adding the link and the script tag right here. I think we lost the share link when I reloaded my page. Any questions so far about the installation, or anybody have an issue linking Bootstrap to an HTML file? Sure. Setup. Very simple. Create a boilerplate, pressing exclamation mark. Done. If you want to change the title, it's fine. All you need to do, go to the Bootstrap web page. Let me close everything here. Right here, you go to the CDN or go to the docs. And inside the docs here, search for Bootstrap 5. It will give you to the introduction page right away. There we go. Make sure you're in the version 5. Get Bootstrap docs 5 getting started. You will have quick start. You copy the CSS file, CDN here, copy that, paste it inside your header, and you can press view or wrap to wrap the text. You get the CSS component. You can also get the JavaScript bundle because it would it have CSS file and a JavaScript file. That's what the library is. You copy the JavaScript, and you also can have it in the header. If you want, you can add the defer. Defer mainly will defer the loading of the script until the whole body get executed. If you save everything, we have an extension. You click here to download any extension that you probably have. I have tons of extensions. You can search for live server. Once you get live server, you right click to load the page. For example, we have an H1. Hello, Bootstrap. And you will notice that this page have different font. And I can, if I comment this, you can comment everything in Visual Studio Code by pressing Control/. If I save that, notice now that the font actually is different. Let me do it side by side. So let me uncomment this. And if I save it, this is a hot reload. You'll see the page get reloaded, and it gets reloaded. And now you see Hello Bootstrap. The font get changed that indicate that you actually connected correctly. Anyone having a trouble getting the CDNs? Okay. So what is Bootstrap? Why would we need it? If I know CSS, why would I need Bootstrap? Well, for multiple reasons. Bootstrap, it's easy to use. It's class-based. Think about it, it's classes that already been written for you, and all you need to do is just use it out of the box. So for example, if you go to the components here, you will have, for example, navigation bars. You will have a nice navigation bar written for you. All you need to do is just using the classes. Another feature that Bootstrap is built for mobile first. That means it will work with responsive devices like mobile devices. And that's a design approach that you focus more in a mobile device. And that's the modern way of designing. And then when used in a large screen, you can change the navigation bar or change any of the components to accommodate different screens. So make it responsive. You have the card, you have the card component. You can create nice cards, you can create nice buttons. And instead of you styling them, we're using CSS, which is going to require a lot of typing in CSS. So it's very fast for prototyping. You can create a project really simple by just adding a bunch of classes. And that's it. You're ready to go. That's why it's very popular. It have a lot of helper methods. It have also utility classes that we're going to use a lot, especially the colors, the sizing. And we're going to explore all this utility classes and helper. But again, at the end of the day, similar to any CSS framework, you get it. It's a style sheet. You're adding classes to your element, and that's what's going to make them look much better, or adapting the styles that attach to that CSS class. Okay, so let's start now. I'm going to create another file here. Call it typography. We're going to start with the typography, how we can change font weight, font size, different font, different heading, and different paragraphs that we have. Typography. .html. And I can copy the boilerplate from the installation, paste it here, and that will make this a Bootstrap. And I can change the title. Typography. Okay. So Bootstrap typography, you have all the way H1, H2. They will look a little bit different Bootstraps. For example, here, H1 heading, and I can have it multiple times, H1 all the way to H6, 3, 4, 5, 6. And if you right click and open it with Live Server, there we go. These are the sizes, how they're going to look like, and you can actually check the font weight and the font size by right click and inspect, and that's what's going to open the developer tool. So this is the H1, and you will notice right here that the H1 have the font size. It will be calculated. It's coming from this CSS. It have some margin at the bottom, 0.5 rem, and you can read more about the styles that the Bootstrap will add to the H1, and you can go to the computed values, like the font family is going to be the system UI, the font size is going to be approximately for H1 33.73 pixels. For H2, you'll see it's going to be the font size get pre-reduced, the font weight is 800. So you can inspect and see what is the different heading that Bootstrap provide you, because of course Bootstrap will influence the styling of your heading. Another cool feature in Bootstrap, so I can have a paragraph. It's a paragraph. Let's say H1 heading. If you take a look at it, it looks like a paragraph. However, Bootstrap, you can add a class and call it H1, and it's going to style it as an H1. However, it's a paragraph. So semantically, it's going to be a paragraph. So now it's going to be styled as an H1. However, it's a paragraph. And you can do that pretty much H2, H3, all the way to H6. So you're going to get the styles of the heading of that level. However, at the end of the day, if you inspect it, it should be a paragraph, not an H4. Next, let's say I have an H3. My text is, and I can add a small tag, will be muted. And here this is small, but you can add a class that is called text muted. And notice text muted, it will make the color a little bit gray, like it's muted. So also you can use it in your typography. Beside the regular heading H1, H2, and H3, and H4, and so on, and I also want to guide you through the documentation. So And everything that I'm talking about today, it's going to be inside the documentation, and it's a great documentation that you can read. It's a good read. You can go typography inside the content, and you will see that the H1, how it looked like, and you can copy any of this code snippets. And it will tell you here that you can add classes H1, H2, and so on. Text muted, which is the class to customize. Beside the heading from level 1 to level 2, Bootstrap have its own display heading. And you notice that they are bigger than the regular heading. So you can have a display from 1 all the display to 6. And also only you need the class name display 1, display 2, and so on, all the way to display 6, similar to heading 1, heading 2. And so you can copy this and test it in your code with these classes. So now we have the classes display 1, display 2, and so on. And if I take a look at my page, and I have here the display, notice the different. These are more bigger, so it will indicate that this title is more important than regular heading. So you can put titles in display. Another paragraph. This is a regular paragraph. And this is a lead paragraph. There's a class called lead. And mainly you use it with paragraph. It will make paragraph text a little bit bigger and more prominent for the user to take an action. So let me put an horizontal ruler right here. And I want to show you here the difference between lead and a regular paragraph. Notice that in this lead paragraph that have the class lead, the font is a little bit, the font size is a little bit bigger than the regular paragraph. Okay. Some other utility functions, and you're probably going to find them in the utilities. So if I go to the documentation, we're done here. You have the lead here. This is when you highlight an element or delete an element. This is how it's going to render if you use the del insert the strong element. That's regular HTML elements, but how Bootstrap can render them, that's how it's going to be rendered. Some attributes, naming, spacing, alignment is very important about the alignment. You can center text by using text center, or text right, or text left. So let's take an example here. Have an H1 text alignment. Have paragraph centered text, left text, and right text. Center text, very simple. You add a class, text center. To make the text go on the left, class text left. And at the end here, class text right. And if you take a look now, something wrong here. Let's take a look. This is in the left, which is the default. The spec. Oh, my bad. That was the terminology in Bootstrap 4, not Bootstrap 5. Bootstrap 5 started not choosing left and right. And instead of left, they use start, and instead of right, they use end. So the terminology-wise, the left is going to be start, and the right is going to be end. So left, that's going to be start, and right is going to be the end. Here we go. So you have the right text, which is the end. So the terminology changed from Bootstrap 4. And if you take a look at Bootstrap 4, you can change the documentation. You will see that in Bootstrap version 4, they use left and right, but starting from version 5, they're only using end and start, even with the margin, the utility margin and padding that we're going to learn about them in a little bit. Okay. Any questions so far? Anybody confused how Bootstrap work or how to use this class names? Okay. So it's 7:50. Let's take our first break. And once we get back from break, we're going to cover a little bit more typography, because typography, they have a lot of utility classes that you can use. And then we're going to explore the colors, buttons, how you can colors buttons, and the spacing utilities as well. So Bootstrap is a CSS and JavaScript library because it's have multiple JavaScript components. Okay, I'll see you in 10 minutes. Okay, guys, so we're gonna continue with Bootstrap classes and be more specific about the typography. There's some utility classes, for example, let's put on horizontal line. With CSS, we have text transform. So remember CSS, we have text transform property, where it can take values like lowercase, uppercase, and capitalize. With Bootstrap, we can add it as a class, text, and it can put uppercase. So if I write it in lowercase, or I can put it uppercase, and it can have lowercase. Let's write it all uppercases. So regardless of whatever you're typing here, they're going to be transformed with this class. So here I'm going to turn this text to be uppercase, all the letters. We can also write something like have for the value text capitalize. Notice that most of these classes, since it's affecting the text, they start with the text, then dash, then the value that you want. You want to center the text, you want to make it start, that means from the left, end, that means put it on right, turn it to uppercase, lowercase, capitalize it, and so on. So capitalize text. And if you compare that with the output, look at the uppercase here. They are all the letters uppercase, even though I write it in the HTML in lowercase. Lowercase, even though I write it here all uppercase. And notice capitalized, that means the first letter will be capitalized. Okay, some other utility that's affected the font. You can use, instead of font style or font weight. So we have font weight in CSS. With Bootstrap, I can have class FW. So FW will be short for font weight. And then I can put bold or bolder. So bold text. Let's add a horizontal ruler here. And I can use bolder as a value. Whatever values that you used with the font weight can be used here, like normal, light, and lighter. Normal and bolder. And if you save that, notice that they will be styled. You'll have a bold and bolder, which is with the regular font, it's going to be pretty much the same. You have a normal text and you have light text and lighter text, which is also going to be pretty much the same. But instead of using CSS, you're just using classes and you have the utility class written for you and you just can use it. Next, let's talk about you can mark the text. So there is the class mark. So for example, marked text. You pass the class as mark. Also, we can have text decoration. We have the CSS text decoration property, and now we can put it either underline or none. You can just add a dash. You can also have lined through text. Line through. You can have a class. This is a paragraph. I can turn it to a small text by adding the class small text. And again, you don't need to memorize them. Everything in the documentation, I'm just trying to run through them to make it easy for you and have like a full file that have everything about typography, because they are scattered in multiple documentation. You go here for the alignment, lists, inline, and multiple of them. You go to the utilities. You should have some text utilities as well, like the text alignment, text wrap if you want to wrap your text. But the documentation is always the way to go. Here, the text transform, we already covered that, lowercase, uppercase, and capitalize. Beside the small, let's use text decoration as well with different value. Text decoration, underline. And if you save that, here we go. We have underlined text, marked text, small text, and line through. So it's easy to use this class in Bootstrap, and notice that we don't need to use a CSS file. We can build a full application without actually having a CSS file and have this classes out of the box provided by Bootstrap. Of course, there's a lot more related to typography like block code, but they're less used. I'm just focusing more in the one that we're going to use a lot. Let's cover a different topic here in Bootstrap and go over the colors, how Bootstrap use colors. Let me do HTML. And if you go to the documentation, you can go getting started, customize. This is how you can customize it. This is layouts. We're going to cover the grid system. I think in the utilities as well, colors. You see here, utility colors. And you will see that you can change the text color. And also you can change the background color if you click in background. And Bootstrap use some colors, like the primary will be that Dodger blue color. That's the color for the primary. Whenever you refer to a color as a primary, it's going to be that color. Secondary is a gray color. Success, that means the operation success, so it's a green. Danger, that means red color. So you can't use just background red. It have to be BG or background danger. You have a warning. When you give a warning, it's yellow. And also you have info light, which is like a very light gray, dark, and the body, which is white, transparent. These are all variants. So these are the colors that provided by Bootstrap. Of course, you can override the default, but Bootstrap, you can create your own CSS file. But let's copy that installation file here. and call it colors. And let's start with text colors. Let's have an H1 text colors. For text colors, you can have a paragraph, and you want the class text dash primary. So the color of this text should be the primary text primary color. Secondary will be the gray. And you can add multiple of classes and you separate them by space. For example, I can make the text font weight bold. Can have a paragraph if I want text to be red. So text danger. Text danger color. And I can have warning. And I show you already what is the colors. Warning is going to be the orange one, text warning. And I open that with the live server. You'll see here that the colors, first one is colored as Dodger blue, and it's bold. And notice I didn't write a single CSS line, just adding these two classes. You have here this should be the secondary color. And then you have a danger, which is the red color, and so on. Again, for a full list of all the colors provided, you still have the info, you have the success, which is the green color. But you get the idea here. It's prefixed with text dash then the color name. For background colors, you can have a paragraph to can do class. You start with PG instead of text. PG is short for background. And I can do primary. And I can set the text itself to be white by using text. You have white and light. Light is a very light gray, so I can use light. So primary background with light text. I can have a background to be danger, which is red, and make the text, for example, text primary, make it blue. And if you take a look right now, here we go that the background is blue and the text is light because it's the primary background. Here it's danger background and the text is primary, which is the blue color. So to get the idea, you get dot .bg, then dash, then the color. So this is how you write. This is the syntax. This is class BG dash the color. For a text color, simply dot text dash, and between curly braces, the color. Between curly braces, that means this is replaceable. And this is the same way syntax that Bootstrap writes. It's documentation. So if you take a look at the documentation, it tells you dash, then asterisk, where the asterisk is the color. So it should start with text, then the color name. Here the background, then the color name, and so on. You can as well, not only paragraph, you can add, change the color of links. So for example, I have a link, which is an anchor tag that's not going to go anywhere. So I can say link 1, link 2. Keep in mind that links are considered to be an inline element, so they're going to be right next to each other. I can change the class here to background danger, text primary. I change here the background warning, which is yellow, text success. Here you go. So I have two links. The text here is green because it's text success, and the background is warning as well. Here, the background is danger, and the text is primary, which is blue. Any questions? Okay. Beside the colors, there is another very helpful utility. And I want you to think about the utility class as a low-level class that will give you the flexibility. And instead of writing a CSS property, you use this utility. However, if it's not utility, that means it's going to be a component. For example, a button is a component. A navigation bar is a component. A card is a component. It's not a utility. Utility, you can create a flex utility, shadow sizing. Now we're going to talk about spacing utility. And the spacing here, they put the notation of how you can generate this spacing. I'm going to walk you through it. And instead of using, and when we talk about spacing, technically we're talking about margin, padding. That's the spacing that you can get. Margin is the spacing that outside the element. Padding is the spacing that inside the element. So instead of typing margin top, margin bottom, and so on, you have this utility API that you can use, which is very, very simple to use. So let me walk you through this utility, the spacing utility, .html. Let's get copy here. And first, let's go over the prefixes. So for a utility, you need M, that will be for margin. You don't type margin. P for padding. So if you want to use margin, you start with M. If you want to use P, it will start for padding. If you didn't specify any sides, that means it will affect all four sides. For sides, you can have T for top. For example, we can have MT or PT. That means margin top or padding top, and then you put a value. You can have bottom, which is like margin bottom, padding bottom. You can have start, which is technically left, similar to MS and PS or padding start. Of course, you have end, which is right. You can have margin at the end and padding at the end only. So you can only target which side that you want. Plus to margin start, margin end, margin bottom, margin top, which is the four sides. As again, if you're just using M, that will affect the four corners, the four sides. You have X, which is mean left and right. So it's going to be the horizontal axis. It will add margin to the left and right. So you can write it as MX or PX. You have Y, which is top, bottom. So you can have MY or PY. So again, you start with the property M. Then if you want to add sides, it's optional. So let me put a question mark here, indicate that the sides are optional. Then you specify the size of the margin. So there's multiple sizes. And they start from 1. I mean, start from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. There's different 5 sizes. Size 0, for example, margin top 0, that means it's equivalent to margin top 0 rem in CSS. So I don't have to retype all of that, just empty -0. So I'm removing the margin at the top. Very simple, very convenient. You can add margin top 1, and the size 1 now is going to be, this is equivalent to margin top 0.25 rem. And the rem is the root element sizing, which is multiplier of 16. So technically it's 0.25 multiplied by 16 pixels. Okay, and whatever that 8, which is 4 pixels. So it will add a margin to the top of 4 pixels. 2, it's going to be margin top 2. You can add the size 2. Similar to margin top, I'm going to copy this line. Margin top 0.5. So it's will increase 25 by 2 to be half, which is half of 16. So it's going to be 8 pixels. And that's the default sizing. Margin top 3, or the size number 3, it's going to be 1 rem. And 1 rem is 1 multiplied by 16. So you're going to get 16 pixels. Of course, you don't have to use margin top. It could be margin bottom, margin right, any one of these sides. But you combine the property, either M or padding, with a side and a size. Okay, so let's now 4, which is increase the size of the margin top. It's going to be 1.5 rem, which is 1.5 times 16 pixels. In that case, you get the 16 plus 8, so 6 plus 4, which is going to be 24 pixels. And the last size we have, for example, margin 5, which is margin top. It's equivalent to 3 rem. So 3 rem multiplied 16 times 3, and that's give you that amount. So the way that you use the margin padding, I can have a div. I can say this is a primary color div. And if I added the background here, BG primary, and I can add text light color. And if you save that and run it in the live server, you will have this div. There is no padding and there is no margin to this div. However, I can add here now M-5. M5, that means I didn't specify size. So it will add margin from all the 4 corners with the size of 3 rem. So if I save that, here we go. Notice that the margin is added from top, bottom, left, and right. I can also add a padding, which is an internal space inside this element. So I can add padding -5, and notice that the space here will increase. So I will have a padding for that div. I can create another div to show you that the margin here, class, and let's do PG success text. Warning, why not? This is a success color div, where I'm going to add margin X to be 1 or to be 2. Now you see margin X is left and right. That's the sides. And the padding, I'm going to do padding for all the 4 corners. Let's do size 3. Here we go. So I have padding for that box. So you can control the margin and padding. It was very nice and easy. Utility classes, if you know the syntax, very simple syntax, and it comes in handy. And instead of keep typing margin top, imagine that you're writing CSS for an element margin top, and then you set the margin bottom, and you set all the spacing and the padding. It's much faster to use these utility classes. Any questions? Okay. Let's talk about borders. Can copy my installation boilerplate. I can change the title here to borders. And again, the borders is considered to be, if you go here, Bootstrap, it's considered to be a utility, and you can click on it because it's not an actual component. It's will as it will be considered as you writing CSS. So technically, one class will add that. Is manure? Yes, you will have a GitHub repository that will have all the codes that we develop in a daily basis for the 3 classes. Also, the project that we're going to develop Wednesday is going to have the code inside that repository, and then the repository will be shared with you. You can download all the codes. Okay, for the borders, before we actually cover the border, there is something very important you need to know about Bootstrap. And I'm going to go to the layout, and I'm going to go over containers. What is a container? Container are the fundamental building block of a Bootstrap. So most likely you want to use a container class. Container class, it will make your web page have some spacing from the left and right. It will somehow center the data. And you want to have a wrapper as a container. You can have a container for small screens, medium screens, and I'm going to go to different screens sizes in Bootstrap. But I want you to see the difference with a container and without a container. So let me open this page. Notice that the text starts from the beginning of the page here. And that's not most of how modern web pages look like. Probably you're going to have the content in the middle of the screen here. You have some spacing from the left and right. That's what a container will do. If you wrap here with a container class and with Visual Studio Code, you can actually use emit. So you can type in container with the dot, and you press enter or tab, and it will create a div with that class, which is pretty cool. And I put an H1 right here inside this container class. Look what's going to happen now. It starts right here. So you will have some spacing from the left and right. And it's pretty responsive because now if you increase the width of the screen, the space gets increased. If you minimize the screen, it will minimize the spacing that this text will start with. And that's the container. You have something else called container fluid, which is the default that you start from the beginning of the page. And mainly you use container fluid if you have like a banner or navigation bar. You don't need a container because you want to start it from the beginning of the page till the end of the page. And that's what is a container. So I'm going to use a container. And I'm going to have a div with background light. So background light, padding. So you can do dot padding 5. So these are the classes that I'm adding. I'm putting dot to indicate that this is a class. I'll have margin 5. 5 is 3 frames from the 4 corners. And I can add the border class. And if you add the border class, take a look at it. So I have this nice box. Since it's div, it will take the full width of the screen. Divs are considered to be block level elements. So this is my div. It's a background light. It have this border. If you can see this border here, I can say background white. There you go. So you see the border right here. Okay. Now, what if I want to be more specific? I want only the top border or the bottom border and so on. And instead of border, you can actually specify I'm going to make it, I'm going to turn it back to light color. You can use border dash top. You can use border dash bottom to only set the border for the top, bottom, or end, or start. There you go. So it have the four-cornered border. Here we have only the top border, bottom, and then here we have the right and we have the left border. What about the size and color? So how we can affect the size and the color of a border. To change the size and the color of a border, so I'm going to add margin 3, padding 5. You can use, you need the border regardless, and you can use a border dash and then the size of the border widths. So you have border 1, border 2, border 3, and so on, same sizes that you use for margin and padding. And I want to use border that's size 3. However, you still need the border itself because the border here tell you what is the sides that you want to add the border. So just adding border, it's going to be the 4 corners. Then this is similar to the border style, border widths, I'm sorry, widths of 3. And I can do border with the color danger. If you take a look here, missing an R here. That's why the size is not reflecting correctly. See here, that's the size of 3 pixels of the border. And this is my border, and I was able to change its color. You can make border success. You can make it border 5 here to change the widths, and we have a green border of a width of 5. And if you inspect this border, see that the color of the border and 5 here is 5 pixels because I added border dash 5. Okay, so whatever you add after the dash here is going to be the amount of pixels as a width for the border. But if you want to affect the widths and the color, you need 2 extra border classes. Let's add a horizontal ruler. Now let's talk about rounded corners. In CSS, we have rounded corners. You can do that, get property. Forget what is the property in CSS. But anyway, let's add an H1, say rounded corners. You can copy this, for example. And if I want a rounded corner, I just add rounded like this. Let's take a look at it. So you will see here that they're going to be rounded a little bit. They are not a hard corner similar to this one. You can set, if you want to remove that, it's going to be rounded. So you can set rounded to 0. You can round it as a size as well. You can do rounded 5. If you rounded 5, it's not value. Rounded 3. I think there is 3 sizes of rounding. And you can check the sizes of rounding. You go here in the utility, the borders, border color, border widths, rounded. You have rounded circle to circle, but to get a full circle, the width and height should be the same. You can have rounded top, only going to be rounded on the top. However, in the bottom is not going to be rounded. Rounded end, so it's going to be only from the end rounded, and rounded at the bottom. Rounded pill, so that's another nice class if you want to create like a pill. If you take a look at the rounded pill, In our example, here we go, we get this shape. If you do a rounded circle, it's not going to be circle, it's going to be like ellipse, because the width and height are not the same. To get a full circle, the width and height of the element have to be pretty much the same. Let's go over shadows, how you can add a shadow. Of course, in CSS, we have the box shadow. Here we can add a div that have BG light, margin top 2, padding 4. Let's add a border, round it, and you can add a shadow class. And this will provide a shadow. Let me actually do margin top and bottom, so margin Y. You can see the shadow. Can increase it, margin Y 5. Here you go. You see a shadow here for this box. And of course, to create the shadow, if you take a look at it here, if you inspect this element, it have a box shadow, and this is the value of the box shadow that Bootstrap will provide to you. Okay, this is the default shadow, which is the medium shadow. You can have small shadow, which is adding SM, and you can have LG, which is large shadow. So you have 3 different levels of shadows. This is a small shadow. This is a medium shadow, which is the default, and then you can have a large shadow as well. So that's for the borders, rounding corners, and the shadows. Now, let's start with the very first components that we can use. And the easiest component to use is going to be the bind. So if you click in components, if you click in binds, there is multiple binds that you can use. You have a primary bind, and notice that they have the hover over effect by default. They get darker in color when you hover over them. They have the spacing. You don't have to set the spacing. You can style a bind really easy with Bootstrap. So let's talk about binds. I'm going to copy my installation right here and the binds. And I'm going to need a container. So let's add a main.container. And I have multiple types of bind. The first type is going to be the contained bind. Binds. And you can create contained binds by using a HTML bind. You give it 2 classes. The first one is bind, BTN. And BTN here will provide the spacing, not the colors, but just the spacing, the padding, the margins of the bind. And then the second one, it's going to be for the color of the bind. So BTN dash, then the color that you want from Bootstrap. For example, primary. I can say primary bind. So if I render this page, I get a primary bind right here. And you see, to have an outline, to have a hover over effect, and I was easily able to style this bind. With the CSS, of course, will take multiple of properties to style a bind. But BTN is just simply the spacing, and then you have the color of the bind. You can have all the colors instead of primary. And you can do danger. warning. Dark. There you go. So I got multiple binds here. And we can add actually select multiple selection here. So I can press Control D, select all of them. Actually, I'll select a bind, then a space, Control D. And I'm going to add here margin of 2 to add some spacing surrounding all the binds. There we go. So I added some spacing. Good. So I have a dark bind warning. Notice that the dark bind automatically put the text as white, which is pretty cool. Here for the wording, it will check what is the background color and reflect the text color based on that. That's the default. And of course, you can have other colors like success, PTN, success. And you can have, beside the success, light bind. And save that. Here we go. We have the light bind, success, and so on. You can style links as binds as well. So I can have here an HR, H1, style links as binds. So I can, instead of a button, I have an anchor tag that's not going to go anywhere, and give it a class name PTN primary. So I'm going to say primary link. Save that. Here we go. We have a primary link, which is look pretty much as a regular bind. So instead of removing the underline, that's how we used to do it in CSS. You remove the underline from the link, convert it to display inline block and so on automatically. But if you apply the bind classes to a link, it will make it look like a bind. You can have multiple binds here. Let's do success link. Here you go. So I got 2 links. So this is the contained binds. There is another type, which is our outline binds. Bootstrap provides you with the outline binds. And they're pretty much similar to these binds. So I can copy that, paste it here. Still have the PTN, but between the PTN and the primary, you just add the outline. So I can add it to all of them here. Outline. And the outline is pretty much, that is the outline. When you hover over it, it's going to be filled with the color. It just outlined, have the border of the red. For example, if you have a danger bind, when you hover over it, it will be filled with that color. It's a different type of binds or a different UI for a bind. Again, if you want to get the same result with regular CSS, it's probably going to take you some time writing multiple of CSS property. Here, right out of the box, Bootstrap provided with the bind. Just need to add a bunch of classes. Next, let's talk about sizes, how you can size binds in Bootstrap. The default is a medium bind size. So let's add an H1 here. Bind sizes. And I'm going to have a bind dot PTN primary. And you can add another class, PTN-SM. SM means small bind. So I can say small bind. And then I can have a medium bind, which is the default. And I can have a large bind. So I can control the size of a bind if I want in my application a small bind, large bind, or a medium bind. And see the difference in the UI. This is the small bind. This is the medium bind right here. And this is the large bind. Medium is the default, but you can make the bind smaller. Let's talk about disabled bind. You know that from HTML, you can have a disabled bind. So the way that you do that, you just do a bind, and let's give it a bunch of classes, PTN, PTN primary, disabled bind. And with the native HTML, you can add an attribute and you can call it disabled. But what Bootstrap provides you, that you can, instead of using an attribute, you can add the disabled as a class as well. And both of them will pretty much look the same. Look that they are, you can't actually click on them because they are disabled binds. You can add disabled either as an attribute or as a class. I have a horizontal ruler here. Now let's talk about block bind, how you can add a block of binds or the binds that take the full width of the screen. To add a block bind, it's a little bit different in Bootstrap 5. You have to have a wrapper, and this wrapper, you're gonna make it look like a grid. So you can, D is short for display. So I want this container to be displayed as a grid. And now this is the grid container that I have. As a grid, you can have multiple rows and multiple columns. I didn't specify how many columns my grid will be, so automatically it will be assumed that's one column. So I can add any button inside this container, remove the disabled. I can call it here block button, make 2 of them. So you're displaying them as grid. If you take a look at them, you'll see that they're going to be on top of each other because they are grid. They will take the full width. It's one column and 2 buttons, each one going to be in the row. And since they are grid, you can actually control the spacing between them by using the class gap and then the size. For example, gap 2, gap 3, and so on. Here we go. We're adding 2 pixels as a gap between them. And that's how you can create block level binds. How you can center a bind? Well, you already know that. We have the text center. We can use it as a wrapper and then put my bind here inside this wrapper. Centered bind. And if you save that, you will have the bind centered in the middle of the screen. Okay, so you need to wrap it with the text center, and now this bind will be centered. Now, let's talk about button groups. What is a bind group? Let's say I'm creating a pagination, like the first page, second page, and so on. I want to group all these binds right next to each other. So I can create a bind group. So we'll have an H1 button groups or group buttons. And to create a group button, you need to wrap them with a class PTN group. So it's a div PTN group, and then you can add any buttons that you want. For example, I'm going to add regular button here, primary. This is one. I'm going to remove the margin, of course, and I can say left button. Then I'm going to have the center or middle button, and then the right button. And if you save that, look how they will look like. They're going to be right next to each other. They are grouped together because you wrap them with a class btn group. We actually can make it less text. There you go. So left, middle, right. You can control the size on the group. So you can do btn group sm, and that will make them small group. See here, the size, not on individual fine. If you want to have them outlined, you can use also as well the outline button to create a button group. And now we have an outline group buttons. Okay. Any questions? Okay, let's take our break. Once we get back from the break, we're going to talk about the grid system, how you can the grid system work for responsive screen, and how you can create your application responsive, going over the breakpoints in Bootstrap. And also we're going to cover the forms and go over tables and alerts, hopefully, if we have time. Okay, so I'll see you in after 10 minutes. Okay, guys, so we're going to continue with Bootstrap. And now, since we know how it works, we get familiar with some utility classes, we can work on some other components that we're probably going to use. So we have the button groups, we can use them. Let's talk about I think the most important one right now is the grid system, because you're going to use the grid system to create layouts. So the way that the grid system works, it's based on a flex box. So if you're familiar with regular CSS, it's have a flex box to lay out. But to create a grid system, simply you need a row, you need a wrapper, which is a row, and inside this row you can start some columns, and they should start or have the class column. So you can create a 3-column by row and column, column, column. And notice that the size of them will be equal. That's tell you how we're going to work, some options. You can add some breakpoints, and breakpoint here in Bootstrap. Let me show you something. So the grid system. Bootstrap grid. Actually, need to get the CDNs. So I'm going to copy this one, paste it right here. And to create a grid, it's better to put it inside a container. You need the row. And inside the row, you can start adding your columns. I can add a div with a column, and that's automatically will get its size. For example, if I have 3 columns and say column 1 or box 1 or box 2, box 4, and let's actually box 3, sorry. Let's add 4 boxes. And if I run this, I have them right next to each other. Now, let's add a background of light and add a border as well for all of them, just to see them. And let's add padding 3. So I have 4 boxes. They have light gray background, they have a border, and they have padding of 3. And I have these boxes here. Good. And let's add a margin top to the container. Let's say margin top of 5. There you go. I have my 4 boxes. And they're going to be resized. Bootstrap wants you to think about your screen as divided to 12 columns. That's how the grid system works. So you have a total of 12 columns. You divide your screen to 12 columns. And now you can be more specific, and instead of allowing Bootstrap to resize your columns, you can set a column here with a breakpoint saying that I want in dash small screen. Bootstrap consider small screen for mobile devices to be anything. You have extra small screen that anything is less than 57.6 pixels in width. So any screen that have the width less than 576 pixels. Small screen is gonna be a screen that bigger than 576. And then you have a medium screen, which could be a tablet. Then you have a large screen, extra large screen, and you have extra large screen like a TV. Probably somebody viewing your page on a TV. Okay, here column by itself, that means extra small screen and up if you didn't specify any other screen. So if I put column by itself, it's regardless of my page viewed in a mobile device, if it have like small screen, and you can simulate mobile devices with the development tool here. If you click here, you see here, this is the breakpoints that Bootstrap put. And I can simulate my app in, let's say, Galaxy phone, S8. Notice that you will have the 4 columns. Why? Because you're just using column. That means from small screen and up. From extra small screen, I'm sorry. So you can say from small screen, I want this column to take the full width. As I mentioned, the screen is divided to 12 columns. So I want to take 12 columns, or I can set it from extra small screen to be 12 columns. However, in medium screen, I want this box to take probably quarter of the screen. So 12 divided by 4, you get 3. I can put even 4 columns each. And in large screen, you're putting here different cases scenario for different screen sizes. For large screen and up, I will have 3 columns. Actually, I can put 6 here. Yep. Large screen will be 4. And an extra large screen, it will be 3. Putting 6, that means each box here, or this box, will take half of the screen, because we said the screen is divided to 12 columns. Large screen will take 4, so it will be 30% of your screen, and large screen is going to be 25% of your screen. And if you copy that to all the boxes, and if you take a look now, the mobile device, it will be 12. It will take the full screen, because in a small screen and up, this is not a mobile device. I mean, not a medium device. Medium device will be a tablet. So for iPad mini, it will be half of the screen. That's what I set, column medium 6. If I go to a very large screen, it will be quarter of screen. And if you can resize your page, you will see how dynamically it will allocate their sizes based on the grid system. And now you're writing your code to be adapting to the screen size. Okay. You can add a gap of 2. Here we're going to have some gaps between them. Perfect. And that's the grid system in Bootstrap. Very simple system to create different layouts. You can say something, you can mix it up with the display. So for example, box 1, the display dash display in large screen. So the display in large screen, none. So I want to hide it in large screen for any kind of reason that this box 1 probably have or an image that I want to hide it in large screen. So if you go here in small screen, you see it. But if you go to the large screen, you don't see it anymore. So it's like display none. For example, box 2 in small screen, so D none, small screen and up, or extra small screen and up. I want to show it from medium screen as a block level. So box 2 will start appearing in medium screen and up. So if I take a look, small screen, you don't see box 2. You get to medium screen, box 2 start to appear. And I can remove the gap here. It's just, here we go. Notice box 1 disappeared. So the display property, you can hide some elements in different screen sizes. You can view them. You can set a layout, and I'm going to show you, especially after we cover the form in a little bit, that you can actually create very nice forms when you mix the grid with Bootstrap forms. Any question about the grid system? Okay. Forms. It take a little bit time to style a form, especially because form have multiple elements, have inputs, have labels. So to style a form, it's a little bit hustle with regular CSS. You can style a form very easily by one class. To be more precise, 2 classes. One class is form label. That when you give it to a label inside a form to style it, gives some spacing, padding, and it will make it block level, because by default, the label is inline level element. It will make it block level element. And the second class is the form control, because an input field is considered to be a form control element. So very simple 2 classes will help you to create nice forms. Also, you can control the sizing by form control large. The default is going to be a medium, but you have to add form control large along with the form control. So here we have a form control small. Okay, so let's do a small exercise. Let's create a nice login form. Forms. Let's copy the installation. There you go. Bootstrap forms. And I have a container. And I want to use the grid system. So I will have the row. I will have column. And I can set it because I want to center. There's multiple ways that you can center the form, but I will show you with using the grid system to practice it. So for me, I'm going to create 3 columns. First column is going to be empty space. The last column will be empty space. The one in the middle, that's what I'm going to add my form. So if I want to divide the screen to 3 areas, just 12 columns divided by 3. So column start small screen and up 4, empty div here, column 4 and column 4. And the one in the middle, I will add my form. So you can create a form. There's no action. And right here in this form, I want to have label for, let's say, username. And this div, I will add a BG light background, PG light, and then I'm going to add padding of 5. And let's add a shadow. And let's also add a border. Why not? So I have a label here, username, user name. I'm going to have an input field. And if you render this, this is how it looks like so far. So we can actually style it using bootstraps together. Probably this container, I want to add some margin to the top 5 to push my input or login form down. Let's add here an H1. Let's say login. And let's add a class text center to center it. And for the label, it's class name form label. And notice it add some spacing here. Perfect. For my input field, I will add a class name form control. And look what's going to happen. It's completely changed. Good. Probably I need to move this padding 2 or padding 3. So I have the username here, and I can add a placeholder. Enter your user name. Good. Now we can copy the same label and username, and I'm gonna have the password. Form label, password. Enter your password. And the type should be password. And I have to, probably I need some spacing here after this input field. So after this input field, margin bottom, like 2. And also after this input field, margin bottom 2 or 3. Let's add a 3. And I get a nice looking login form without even writing a single CSS line, just adding a bunch of classes right here. Probably I need to have a submission button. So I need to center it. So I can do text center. And I can have a button with the class PTN primary login. There you go. So you can enter the username, password, and the login button. Of course, it's going to submit the form, so it's going to refresh page. You can have a horizontal ruler here. Nice. So that's how you can create very simple, nice forms, and you can add form control to input with any type or a text field. Beside that, the regular input field, because that's we have a form control, you can add a disabled. So here if you have a form control, you can add the disabled attribute. You have a read only. That's when you add the read only attribute. That's actually HTML, but Bootstrap here, it's showing you how it's gonna look like. But as a functionality wise, it's coming from HTML, the read only or the disabled attributes. That's part of the HTML. How you can put an input field right next to a button. You can use the grid. I am I want to go over the select. How you can create a select. Let's add a new form here. And again, I just want to practice here. The grid system, however, you can actually center this completely different without the grid system. Let's add here a different form. And I'm going to use the grid system row, and I'll have a column. And let's say let's say 6 column from small screens. From small screens and up, let's do a 12. And then we're going to, starting from medium screen and up, to be half of the screen. And I want to have a form input field. And I'm not going to use a label, so I'm going to have an input field, class, form, control. I'm going to have a placeholder, passenger name. And if you open that for this as well, let's add some margin top 5. And for this div, or the wrapping div, for this row, let's add a PG light, P3, and shadow and border. So I have the passenger name here. You can add a gap of 2, or it's actually not a gap, it's gutter. So the gutter or the spacing around each one, let's say 2. Good. So I have the passenger name here. And let's say I want to have a drop-down menu here for his country. So he can select his country from here. And I'm using the grid system to show you how you can put an input field right next to another form control element, which in that case, I'm going to use the drop-down or the select. If you read about the select, all you need to do is just use a select and use a class called form select. That's it. And then it will be styled. You can also size it. You can use form select large, or form select small. You can have multiple selection, and multiple actually coming from the HTML. It's an attribute. You can have disabled as well. So let's add. So again, it's a select element with the class form select. So in the second div with the column 12 and small screen, and in medium screen and up to be 6, we'll have a select element with the class form select. And I don't need the ID or the class. Probably need a label to show that this is the country selection, but I can add an option value. Let's do USA, Italy, China, and UK. Now, if you take a look at our page, I should have here the drop-down menu that he can enter the passenger name, and right here he can select his country. And of course, you can add a label and add the form label class to it. But as you can see, it's very easy to create this type of forms with Bootstrap, and it will be styled out of the box. So I'm done with this row, which is technically I will take this classes, we'll add it to a wrapper. Probably we're going to have a section class and add this class and add this row to it, because I'm going to add a different row. Now, I'm done with the first row here. This is the first row. I want to gonna start a new row down here. So you start a new row. And in the second row, after the select, we have, let's have checkbox and radio binds. For a checkbox, you need a form check, and the form check is the wrapping element, and you have an input form check input, so it's have a form check input, and have a label, which is form check label. So form check is the wrapper for the checkbox and the label that's associated with it. Okay, so you need a wrapper of form check, and you can actually take that copy. So you have form check, you have an input field, form check input. It have to be with the type checkbox. Can remove the ID. We don't need it. Actually, I need ID. Let's call it terms for terms. And notice now that we putting the text after the checkbox, the order matter here. If you have the checkbox before the label, then it will appear before the label. If you have the label before the checkbox, the text will be first, then the checkbox. And here we can say by agree to the terms and conditions. If you save that, of course, I'm missing a column here because I want to have it. I can have the full size in from small screen to large screen to be 12 columns. There you go. Agree to the terms and conditions. Probably I want to push it a little bit down. So margin top 2. Okay. So you can agree to the terms and conditions. And we have a nice checkbox right here. So that's for the checkbox. What about the radio binds? Radio binds, still the same. Form check input, form check label. The only difference is that the type is going to be a radio. For example, we can copy this column down. We can have 2 columns. And here I changed that to a radio. And instead of a checkbox, here I'm going to put male. And I can add like paragraph, gender. So my form check have the input and label. And I need another form check, 3 of them, 1 for female and 1 for other. And of course here, that's for male, You should have the value here, gender, because you should have 1 value, gender. Actually, it's female. And the last one here, other terms. Female. Other. So you can have here, but you can have multiple. I'm doing a mistake here. And the mistake that I'm doing is the name, because they should all have a name field. So the name should be gender. Because again, each selection here should have a name and a value. The value are different, but they all tied to the same name, so it will allow you to select one of the 3 fields. Name, gender. Go. Let me refresh. Still having multiple. Oh, I didn't save here. So let me press Control S. There you go. You can only select one of them. And that's for the gender, and this is for the checkbox. This is radio button, and this is checkbox. Very simple. You wrap them pretty much the same. The only different is the type of the input field. Either it's radio button or it's a checkbox. Beside the radio button and checkboxes, you have the switches. You have something called switch here. And the switch is technically as a checkbox because you can set it to have a value or no value. You can check it, checkbox. And form check, similar as you can use checkbox, you only add extra form switch. So if I copy this, and add it right here, and I remove form switch, look what's going to happen. It's just a regular checkbox, but just adding a form switch, it will make it look like a switch. There you go. And I have a switch right here, which is technically is a checkbox behind the scene. And I can change the ID, check box for checkbox. Good. Beside the checkboxes, stacked is not important. You can do them in line. So if you're adding a class called inline, that will put them right next to each other. So for example, here in our gender, if I add inline, check, it's form check inline, not just inline. Form check inline, and you have to add it to all of them. It will make them right next to each other and instead of top of each other. So you can have inline elements. If you get back here, you will notice that you can make the selection and all of them in the same line instead of top of each other. Very nice, simple classes. You can see with the example here, they give you the example, and you can use it right away. Let's see the ranges. You can have a range like this. And technically, it's coming with, if I copy this, it's come with HTML. They just style it much better. So let me remove the class. This is how the HTML range look like. This is the default one comes from HTML. To style it with Bootstrap, you add, forget the class, form range. That's it. All of this classes start with form. Prefix was form. So you can have form range. And it will be styled by Bootstrap. Technically, it will take the full width and will be look a little bit different. So another nice, cool form control here. Bootstrap 5, I believe they started the floating label. That wasn't previously in Bootstrap 4. So you have this kind of UI floating label. And it's very simple. The input still using form control, business as usual here. You just have a wrapping the input and the label. The label here, you don't have to give it any class, just a label with form floating. Let's give it a try. Now our input here from this form, I have a label, form. Floating, yep. Didn't misspell it. And you put the label and the input field inside this wrapping form flooding. And now if you take a look at it, and it's not flooding because it's have a label, because flooding, what I'm doing wrong here. I think I know, probably because I have this class label form. The label now is just stick over there. Interesting. So form flooding, margin bottom, type email, form control. I doubt this is the reason that you have the, here we go. So the issue was the label before the input field. So which comes after which. So the input field here have to come first before the label. And now we're going to have this nice effect, user effect of floating labels. Okay. Now let's talk about form validations. Validation is important. So you can have this effect if the input field is correct, and you add this by is valid class or is invalid class. So I can add to this input field a class is invalid, and now it will show that this input field is invalid. For the password field here, I can add is valid, and of course by using JavaScript, by dynamically adding this classes and removing this classes could be very, very good user interface because it's already pre-built in Bootstrap. This is for the label. So I should add it to the input field here. There we go. So it will show that this is valid input. You also have helper text. See this text, this is the valid feedback. This is the class. So if I copy this and I put it after the password, if I remove is valid, notice I didn't put any validation for this password. You don't see this text. This text only will appear because it's a valid feedback. If this input field, you mark it as valid, it will only view. So if I put here is valid, look what's going to happen now. You actually see the text appear because this is the feedback if the form is valid. And you can have invalid feedback as well, which is very nice, cool features for validating forms in Bootstrap. Okay. That's enough for the forms, and probably that's what we're going to use so far for the project. Let's now move to cards, which is a card is one of the components. So how we can build a card using Bootstrap. So hopefully we're going to be cover the cards and the list groups. Let's go here, cards, here, HTML. Copy our installation, go to the card, which is a component, CSS components, Bootstrap card. Let's have a container. Or actually, let's start with the navigation bar, navbar, and card, because we can put it in one file like a small project. Let's say I want to have a navigation bar. To create a navigation bar in Bootstrap, any application is probably going to need a navigation bar. Go to the navbar. And again, you can copy any one of them and customize it to your needs, but I want you to fully understand what is this classes will do for you. So this is a navigation bar, simple navigation bar. I'm going to copy it. And let's go over its classes. Actually, let me put it outside the container because I probably am going to have a header tag. And inside the header, I'm going to have my navigation bar. Okay. Can push it back like this. I can set my spaces to 2. Save. Perfect. Okay. I hate that. Nav, here the element, it will have a class navbar. Navbar will give you the spacing. Navbar expand to large, that means starting from large screens, expand the navigation bar. What I mean by expanding the navigation bar, this navigation bar here, or actually, let me view it here. This is my navigation bar. In smaller screens, look how it's going to look like. You're going to have this button, and you can click on it, and you will see the drop-down menu. You want to expand this. Now I'm in the medium screen. Once I reach to the large screen, now it's going to be expanded to a full screen. That is what this class is. I want to expand my navigation bar to a full screen when it's large screen size. I can change that to medium screen. So now if I go to a medium screen, it will be large or expanded. But if it's a small screen, you will have this mobile device view. Navbar light is not the color of the navigation bar, it's the text. So if you say navbar light, that means the text will be black. So if I change it navbar dark, notice that the text is light, so it's going to affect the text color. So if you want to build a navbar dark, so you set navbar dark and you change the background. Let's say background to dark. Now I have the text to be light. Good. Next, you're going to have the container, and you can have a container fluid or just regular container. I like to use regular containers because now it's going to add some spacing from the sides here. You have an anchor tag or a net link. That's mainly for the logo, and take the class navbar brand. So you can add the logo right here. You can even add an image and mainly take you to the home page. This button right here, this is the button by default in larger screen. You're not going to see it, but this button is that button here. You define it for small screens. Keep in mind, Bootstrap is mobile device or mobile first styling framework. So this button here is the small screen button, and you give it a name, class navbar toggler. So this is the toggler button that will toggle the navigation bar. It's type button. This is coming from Bootstrap JavaScript. I'm going to talk about this. You don't need the area control. The area control here are for accessible or screen readers. You can remove them. So if user have a disability and using a screen reader application, they would read the functionality for this button for the user. But for now, I don't care about screen readers. I'm focusing in the user that will actually go to the web page and see it. So this is a button. It's called navbar toggler to give it to show it only in small screen. And the data functionality for it, notice that all the JavaScript are passed as attributes. It's going to be data-bs, bs short for Bootstrap. And now the data that I want to pass here, that it's going to be a toggling button, and it's going to toggle and a collapse. So it's going to collapse my menu up and down. Okay. The span right here, it says navbar toggler icon. This is the icon that you see it here. This is the 3 bars. Okay. So if I remove this, you'll have the button, but nothing inside it. Of course, it's not going to affect your large screen. If you go to the large screen, the button is not there anymore because this is navbar toggler only shows in small screens. So this is the icon here. This is a Bootstrap icon for the navbar toggler icon. Good. So this is the button. Let me add here small screen button. Now this button is responsible for toggling the menu. This is my menu. You click here, show the menu, hide the menu. And this is the toggle. It's going to be collapsing this menu. But what about the target? Target, you're referencing or point to the menu that you want to collapse. Here, you're referencing the ID, and this is my menu right here in this div. And I can change the ID here, call it my menu. You can call it anything you want. But whatever you type here is referencing your menu, and you change it here, my menu, if you change it. And here, start with the hashtag indicating the ID. This menu will going to be collapsed. So you have to add collapse because in small screen, it's going to be collapsed. And it will take another class, navbar collapse. And you start your listing your links by navbar nav. This is the navigation list. Every single list item will have a nav item. A link will be nav link. Active will make it active. And the first one here is active. So it will be more white than the rest of them because it's active. So if I change the active, you move it from here, add it to the second link. So you'll find the second one is active link. So active will be, that means this link is the current page link. You can remove the area current page. And let's say I want to have a link about my resume or projects. Resume, contact, and we can remove the last one. Just 3 items. Here we have the navigation bar, projects, resume, contacts. If you go to the large screen, notice that they start here right after the logo. And this is the wrapping div. What if I want to push them at the end on the other side? Well, that's very simple. We talked about that. Here in this collapse, we can add MS, where I'm going to start them. And I can set it to auto. Auto, that means margin auto from the start. So it will push them all the way to the right. Let me add it right here. Guess. Here we go. So this UL or this list item of this links, I want to start them whenever you're going to start auto. So it will put all the space before they get started. Margin start auto. So this is navigation links. Again, don't bother to memorize all of them. Nobody memorized them. You can always go to the Bootstrap documentation and just copy and edit it. If you know what each class will do for you, you're good. You can easily edit any navigation one. Highly don't recommend unless you're using Bootstrap a lot. You'll get used to it. So that's for a simple navigation bar. Let's say that this is my navigation bar. And you can add a shadow for it if you want. You can use other classes that we learned about. So you have a shadow at the bottom. Now let's add a card right here. If you check the component card, you give it a class card. You could have an image, and you give it a class card image top. You can have a card body. This is considered to be the card body. You can have card title. This is the title. So notice that all the elements inside it, it will start with the prefix card. So let's create a card right here. So class card image top. It's actually an image. Card image top. And we can get an image from, let's say, search for a project image or coding or code image, something like that. You can actually go to Unsplash to get free images. Computer, get this image. You can right-click in the image and copy the image address. You don't need to download it. And you put the image address right here. Let's do view, word wrap. And here we go. I have my card. It taken the full width. That's another thing that we never, or the image taken the full width. We never set the width of the card. So to set the width of the card here, we can just use a regular style where I set the width, let's say 250 pixel. And now the image should be matching its parent. Here we go. Also for this container, I'm going to add margin top 5. And you can do even better. If you don't want to use a style, we can use a grid system here. We can create a row, and we can have a column, small screens to be full width. In medium screen, we're going to be half the screen. In large screen, be 4. And you're going to reduce the amount of column it will take as you increase the screen size. Column extra large 3. Here you go. Then you can add your card inside this column. And instead of actually setting the style, and automatically it will be sized based on that column. So if I save that, that's in large screen. Misspelled container here. So here's my card. Right now, it just have an image. Notice that the card will take the full width and small screen. In medium screen, it will be half of the screen. It's fully responsive. Now let's go to the card body. Card body. And for the card body, I'm going to have an H1 card title. And I can say my first project. And I can have an H2. And I think there is card subtitle. Let's say it's in August 23rd, 2021. Let's take a look. This H1 is so big, but because small screen, here we go. Oh, this is still big. Card title, because H5, let's use H5. Let's use here H6. And we can do font style, italic. And we can do muted, text muted, and text center. There you go. My first project, August 23rd, 2021, and this is the card body. I can add a shadow to the whole card. So I can add a shadow. And the card will have a shadow. And I can have some random text here. So I can have a paragraph, and I can add lorem. And if you save that, you'll have some text here. But also you can add a class for this text, class. And we can add card text. Not sure, let's take a look what it's gonna add to this text, how it's gonna change it. Just gonna reduce the margin right here. See here, you have more margin, card text will reduce, it will remove the padding at the bottom right here. You can have a card footer. And in the card footer, you can put some buttons, for example. PTN dark. And we can say read more. And you see here, the footer, actually I did a mistake. The footer will not inside the body. This is the body, it should be outside the body. So you have the body, after the body, you'll have the footer. And it could have a header as well. Look, notice that the footer would just have a background, lighter background, but it identified that the footer of this card. And we can center this button by text center. And now it will have this button in the middle of the card. And you have nice card design right here. Using Bootstrap, as I mentioned, it's out of the box. You can add another card. So it's going to be fully responsive. So you can copy this one down. So I have two cards. And you see here, they are back to back. So I probably want to add some margin Y of 2. And probably add here margin Y2 to add spacing from the top and bottom. And that fixes this issue. You have some spacing right here. And here we have two cards, and you can have multiple cards in the same page. And you can see now it's working very nice. You have a navigation bar, you have cards, and you can easily build some project. If you have to do the styling by your own, probably going to take you hours just to create the classes with the CSS and write all the properties to have a nice card with an image, write all the CSS for the images and the buttons. Let's quickly talk about, now we're probably going to run out of time, but list group. List group, you will have a list, you add a list group, and then list group item, and it will print the list. And instead of the default UL or unordered list in HTML that have bullet points, it will print a nice list like this. You can add an active state to it, and in that case, we'll make it background blue. The nice feature will be flush. You can flush it. So you can have, in that case, you're not adding the border, and you add it as a list group flush. So let's add a list group here. Inside my container, go down, list group. It's actually, you add it to a UL. Let's have a list item, list group item. Let's say HTML, CSS, Java, making a list script. If you save that and open it with the live server, here is my list, and it looked nice, and I can add some margin top 5. Good. You can add any other styles that you or classes that you're familiar, like shadow. If you want to add a shadow here, I can make it colored. You can even see how we can use list to create this nice UI. You can also use colored here, which is context for colors. Let's group item primary. Let's group item secondary and whatever color you want for that specific item. You can set it as list group item action, and that will give you this hover over effect. So I can do list group item action. Save it right here. Not changing the colors, but if I get back right here, you have this hover effect. When you put the cursor on top of one of the items, it will change its background color, and you can change the color list group item. Let's say success. And you will have the background to be green. Okay. So again, in this file, we used the navigation bar, we used the cards, and we used the list group as well, components. And list groups and cards are obviously our CSS components. So I'll stop right here. Again, there is a lot of components that we need to cover. For example, the carousel are considered to be JavaScript component. Spinners, toasts. There is a lot of components that definitely we're going to cover tomorrow as well that we're going to need in the project. So tomorrow we'll continue with components, but however, JavaScript components, like for example, the scroll spy is a very nice feature. So when you scroll, you will notice it's dynamically will change or highlight which section you're in inside the page. So that's called scroll spy because it's gonna spy on whatever you're scrolling. And this is a JavaScript component that provided from Bootstrap. Probably want to implement that type of a user interface. I'll stop right here to take any question about anything we covered today. I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. Okay. Yes, definitely. And well, you can, especially if you're using JavaScript, you don't have to, you can get the data, and based on the data, you generate dynamically all the cards based on the data in JavaScript. You don't have to manually type in the HTML for every single card. You just make a template for one card, and technically the JavaScript, you're going to loop through all the data to generate cards for them. Yep, definitely JavaScript will make your codes more powerful if you're familiar with JavaScript. Okay, anyway, if you for today material, I'm going to push it to a GitHub repository. I'm not sure if the repository created or not, but once it gets created, I will share in the channel the link for the GitHub repository, so you can be able to download all the files that or the class notes that we took together. It should be in the class channel later, probably today or tomorrow before the class, the GitHub repository. So you're going to be able to download all the class notes. Of course. Okay. If you get any other questions, post it in the class channel. I continuously monitoring the class channel, and I'll be more than happy to answer any of your questions. Have a good night, guys. See you tomorrow.